Stood in the middle of my sister's kitchen, holding a coffee mug she had given me as a welcome home gift, and I could not move. Not because I was tired from the flight. I had taken the red-eye from Seattle back to Chicago, and yes, 14 months of living out of a suitcase will wear anyone down. But that was not why I was frozen. I was frozen because I had just checked my email. Specifically, I had just read a message from a title company I had never heard of, Lakeshore Property Solutions, thanking me for my business and wishing me well in my future endeavors. There was a transaction summary attached. My name was on it. The address on it was my address. The sale price listed was $460,000, and the date on it was 11 months ago. I put the coffee mug down very carefully. I did not want to drop it. My hands were doing something strange, not shaking exactly, more like vibrating at a frequency too low to see. I sat down at my sister's kitchen table and I read the email 3 more times. My sister walked in from the hallway, still in her pajamas, hair in a messy bun. Her name is Viv, short for Vivienne, though she has hated that name since middle school. She is 2 years older than me, 34, and for most of my life she was my closest friend. She saw my face and stopped walking. "You look pale," she said. "Viv," I said, "did you sell my condo?" The pause that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds. In my memory, it lasts about 100 years. "Brooke," she said. "Let me explain. My name is Brooke Ellison. I am 32 years old. I am a licensed CPA and I have been working in forensic accounting for the last 6 years, which means, in plain terms, that I find money people try to hide. I trace it. I document it. I help attorneys build financial fraud cases. I have testified in federal court. I know exactly what a paper trail looks like, and I know exactly what it means when one exists. I need you to understand that before I tell you the rest of the story. Because the thing about discovering that someone has committed financial fraud against you is that the shock is real. Even when you are the kind of person who does this for a living. Even when you know every mechanism by which it can be done. You still sit there at your sister's kitchen table with a coffee mug that says "Home Sweet Home" on it, and you cannot fully process the fact that the home in question no longer belongs to you. Let me back up. 14 months earlier, I had accepted a contract position with a large regional hospital system based in Seattle. The role was temporary, a 14-month forensic audit engagement, helping them untangle some financial irregularities in their billing department. It was a significant opportunity, the kind that does not come twice. I negotiated hard, got a strong rate, and accepted. My condo in the Wicker Park neighborhood of Chicago was a problem. I had bought it 3 years before, a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a converted brownstone, original hardwood floors, south-facing windows, the kind of place you feel lucky to have found. I owed about $240,000 on the mortgage at that point. The unit was worth somewhere between $450 and $480, depending on the market. I did not want to sell it. I loved that condo. I intended to come back to it. Renting it out was the obvious solution, but managing a rental from 1,400 miles away felt complicated. My sister offered to help. She lived 20 minutes from Wicker Park. She knew the building. She had met my neighbors. She said she would keep an eye on things, handle anything that came up, coordinate with a property manager if I wanted to go that route. I said I would think about it. 2 weeks before my departure, my sister sat me down and presented what she called a plan. She had researched property management companies. She had identified a tenant, a colleague of hers, reliable, good income, looking for a short-term lease. She had typed up a list of everything she would handle. She was thorough. She was prepared. She was, as she had always been, the responsible older sister who thought 3 steps ahead. I gave her a limited power of attorney. I want to say that word, limited, because it matters. The document I signed, drafted by an attorney I hired specifically for this purpose, authorized my sister to manage the property on my behalf, to coordinate with the property management company, to handle maintenance requests, to collect rent and deposit it into an account I had set up for that purpose. It explicitly excluded the authority to sell, transfer, or encumber the property in any way. Explicitly. In writing. Notarized. I moved to Seattle on a Tuesday. I called my sister every couple of weeks. The tenant moved in. I got deposit confirmations, everything seemed fine. I was busy, the engagement was intense, the hospital's records were a disaster, I was working 60-hour weeks and falling asleep at my desk. I trusted my sister. I trusted her completely. I did not look at the property account as carefully as I should have. The deposits stopped coming around month 4, but Viv told me the tenant had moved out unexpectedly and she was working on finding a new one. I was in the middle of a deposition prep. I said okay, keep me posted, and I went back to work. I did not look at the county recorder's website. Why would I? The house was mine. I had not sold it. Except, apparently, I had. Let me explain, Viv said again. She sat down across from me. Her hands were folded on the table. She looked, I noticed, like someone who had been preparing for this conversation. Not panicked. Prepared. There was a buyer, she said. A developer. He made a really strong offer. The market was peaking, Brooke. And I was looking at the numbers, and I knew if you waited, you were going to miss the window. I was trying to protect your investment. I looked at her. The power of attorney didn't authorize a sale, I said. I know, she said. You forged my signature. She did not answer that directly. She said, I made a judgment call. I want to tell you that I screamed, that I flipped the table, that I did something proportional to what I was feeling, which was approximately the size of a natural disaster. I did not. I sat there very quietly for a long time, and then I asked her where the money was. She told me she had invested it. She said it with the calm of someone describing a grocery run. She had invested it. She had taken the net proceeds from the sale of my home, roughly $210,000 after paying off the mortgage and closing costs, and she had put it into a friend's private equity deal, real estate development. She said it was going to triple. She said she was growing my money for me. She said she was going to surprise me when I got home. I was going to tell you everything, she said. When you walked in the door, I had a whole plan. Where is the money now, Viv? She looked at the table. The private equity deal had not gone the way her friend had promised. I will spare you the details because there are many of them and most of them are painful in a very specific, very stupid way. The short version is that her friend, a man I had met exactly once at a Christmas party, someone who talked about disrupting the market and wore expensive sneakers with a suit, had used investor funds to cover personal debts, and the whole thing had unraveled about 4 months earlier. There were lawyers involved. There was apparently an SEC inquiry. $210,000 gone. I asked if she had told our parents. Mom knows, she said. She was going to help me figure out how to tell you. I picked up my phone. I called a car. I did not take the coffee mug. My parents live in a suburb called Oak Park, about 30 minutes from the city. I had not planned to go there that morning. I had planned to sleep, to unpack, to eat a real meal for the first time in what felt like weeks. Instead, I sat in the backseat of a rideshare and watched Chicago pass the windows and tried to organize my thoughts. Here is what I knew. My sister had sold my property without legal authority to do so. She had either forged my signature on the closing documents or found someone to forge it for her. She had used a power of attorney document that did not authorize the sale. She had done all of this without telling me. She had taken the proceeds and handed them to someone who turned out to be running what sounded a lot like a Ponzi scheme, and my mother knew. Here's what I needed to find out: how the sale had actually been executed, who the notary was, whether the buyer had a legitimate claim to the property, what the title company's exposure was, and whether there was any money left to recover. I was not thinking about forgiveness yet. I was not thinking about family. I was thinking the way I always think when I'm working a case, systematically, forward, one piece at a time. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She must have seen the car pull up. She is a small woman, my mother. She used to seem larger when I was a child. She looked at my face and said, "Brooke, come inside. We can talk about this like adults." My father was in the kitchen. He stood up when I walked in. He is a retired civil engineer, and he has the bearing of someone who has spent his career ensuring that large structures do not fall down. He looked at me and then looked away, which told me something. "How long have you known?" I asked my mother. "About 2 months," she said. Your sister was going to fix it before you came home. She had a plan. She keeps saying that, I said. She had a plan. What was the plan? My mother sat down. My father sat down. My father sat down. The plan, as it turned out, was that Viv was going to take out a personal loan using her own house as collateral to put money back into an account in my name, and I was never supposed to know the condo had been sold. She was going to rent me an identical unit in the same building, claim the original lease had ended, and present the whole thing as a seamless transition. She had been going to lie to me indefinitely about the fact that I no longer owned property I had owned. And you thought this was acceptable, I said to my mother. I thought it was the best option for keeping the family together, she said. I left without eating. Back in my hotel room, I had booked one the night before, not wanting to assume anything. I opened my laptop and started working. The first thing I pulled was the Cook County Recorder of Deeds database. It took about 4 minutes to find the transaction. The deed had been recorded 11 months ago. The buyer of record was an LLC, Greystone Holdings, and the listed grantor was me. My name, my signature, according to the document. I requested copies of the closing file from the title company by email, citing my identity as the seller of record. This is something anyone can do. Most people do not know that. Title companies are required to maintain closing files, and the named parties on the transaction have the right to request copies. The file came back within 48 hours. I went through it page by page. The closing had been conducted remotely. That is common now. A notary comes to you, you sign, everything gets sent back. The notary on the documents was someone I had never heard of, a woman operating under a company called QuickSign Notary Services. I looked her up. She was a legitimate commissioned notary in the state of Illinois. She had signed off that she had witnessed my signature and verified my identity. She had never met me. The power of attorney document attached to the file was not the one I had signed. It was a different document, same general format, same notarization stamp from the original attorney, but the language was different. The exclusion clause was gone. The section that explicitly prohibited sale or transfer of the property had been removed. Someone had altered the document. I am a forensic accountant. I work with altered documents. I have a process. I also had the original, unaltered power of attorney, saved as a PDF in my cloud storage, time-stamped from the day I had signed it. I made copies of everything. I organized the file, and then I called an attorney. Her name is Renata, and she is one of the best real estate fraud attorneys in Illinois. I had referred clients to her before. She picked up on the second ring, and when I explained the situation, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Send me everything." Renata moved fast. Within a week, she had filed a complaint with the Illinois Attorney General's office, contacted the Cook County State's Attorney's office, and sent a preservation letter to the title company and to Greystone Holdings demanding that all related records be maintained. She also sent a letter to the notary. Here is something most people do not know about title insurance when a property is sold fraudulently, when the deed is void because the grantor never actually authorized the transaction. Title insurance exists precisely to address that scenario. The buyer of my condo, the LLC called Greystone Holdings, had purchased an owner's title insurance policy at closing. That policy was about to do a lot of work. I did not tell my family any of this. My mother called 3 times. I let it go to voicemail. My sister texted me something long and carefully worded that I read twice and did not respond to. My father left a voicemail that began with, "Brooke, I think we all need to take a step back," and I deleted it before he finished the sentence. I was not ready for the conversation they wanted to have. The conversation where I was supposed to absorb what had happened, weigh it against my love for them, and decide that family meant we do not call law enforcement on each other. I already knew what I thought about that. 3 weeks after I came home, Renata called and told me the state's attorney's office was moving forward. There would be charges against my sister for deed fraud, forgery, and breach of fiduciary duty. The notary, the QuickSign woman, was cooperating with investigators. She had been approached by my sister's friend, the private equity man, who had facilitated the whole transaction and was himself now facing additional charges related to the investor fraud case. This was bigger than a family problem. This was organized. My mother called again that afternoon. This time I picked up. "Brooke," she said, "you cannot do this to your sister. She made a mistake. She was trying to help you." "She forged my name on a deed," I said. "She sold my home. She gave the money to a fraudster. And you knew. If you go through with this, you will destroy this family." I had a response ready, but I did not use it. I said something simple instead. I said, "Mom, she destroyed it first." I went to my sister's house 2 days later. Not to talk. I had nothing left to say that my attorneys had not already put in writing, but Viv had left a message saying there were some of my belongings still at the condo from before she had the place sold, items she had put in a storage unit nearby, and she wanted me to come get them before she stopped paying for the unit. I drove over. I loaded boxes. She stood in the doorway of the storage unit and watched me. "I loved you," she said. "Everything I did, I thought I was helping." I kept loading boxes. "The guy swore to me it was a guaranteed return," she said. "I thought I was going to give you back double. I thought you'd be grateful." I set down the box I was holding. I turned around. "Viv," I said, "you did not ask me. You did not tell me. You took something that was mine and you decided what to do with it because you thought you knew better. And then, when it went wrong, you sat on it for almost a year and let me walk back into your kitchen and made me coffee while you figured out how to keep lying to me." She did not say anything. "That's not love," I said. "That's control dressed up as love. There's a difference." I picked the box back up and put it in my car. The criminal process took time, as it always does. What moved faster was the civil side. Title insurance, as I mentioned, is designed for exactly this scenario. Greystone Holdings, the LLC that had purchased my condo, had a valid claim against their own title insurance policy because the deed they received was fraudulently executed and therefore void. The title insurance company, in turn, had a claim against my sister. The civil litigation sorted out over the following 8 months, and I will give you the short version. The sale of my condo was voided. The deed was unwound. The property was restored to my name, with the original mortgage reinstated. Greystone Holdings, because they were an innocent purchaser acting in good faith, was compensated through the title insurance process. They did not have to pay twice, the insurance covered them. And my sister's civil liability was established, meaning any assets she had could be pursued to satisfy the judgment against her. Her house went on the market 4 months later. I am not happy about that. I want to be clear. There is nothing satisfying about watching your sister sell her home to pay a judgment. Whatever she did, whatever she cost me, I did not want to watch her lose her house. But I also did not stop it. My sister was charged with felony defraud and forgery. She pleaded guilty to a reduced charge as part of a negotiated plea, and she was sentenced to 2 years of supervised probation, substantial fines, and mandatory restitution. She avoided prison, which her attorney presented as a victory. I presented it to no one. I was not keeping score. The private equity man, her friend, the one with the expensive sneakers, was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison on wire fraud and securities charges related to the investor scheme. That had nothing to do with me specifically, but it mattered. My parents have not spoken to me since the charges were filed. My mother sent a card at Christmas. She signed it with her name, not Mom. I appreciated the honesty of that. I am back in my condo in Wicker Park. The south-facing windows let in good light in the afternoons. I got new floors put in, not because the old ones were bad, but because I needed the place to feel like mine again, completely, without the residue of what had happened. I bought a new coffee maker. The one Viv gave me, the welcome home gift from that first morning, I gave to a neighbor. People ask me sometimes, colleagues, people who know parts of the story, whether I regret reporting it, whether I wish I had handled it differently, whether I think about the relationship I had with my sister and feel like it was worth losing. I understand why they ask. It is a reasonable question. The answer is harder to explain than the question suggests. What I regret is the trust I placed without verification. I should have checked the property account every month. I should have registered for the county recorder's email alerts, which notify you of any deed activity on properties in your name. a free service available to anyone that I did not bother to set up because I was busy and I assumed that what I had put in place was enough. I am a forensic accountant who got defrauded by her own family because I stopped doing the thing I do for a living. I do not regret reporting it. I do not regret the legal process. What my sister did was a crime, not a mistake, not a judgment call, not a loving gesture that went sideways. She forged documents. She used a fraudulent power of attorney to deceive a title company and a notary. She transferred a property she had no legal right to transfer, and then she planned to hide it from me indefinitely. You do not forgive your way out of fraud. You document it, you report it, and you let the system do what it exists to do. I know that sounds cold. I know some of you reading this are thinking about your own sisters, your own families, and finding it hard to imagine making the call I made. I am not going to tell you what you should do. Every situation is different. Every family is different. What I will tell you is this. The morning I sat at that kitchen table with the coffee mug and the email from the title company, the world I had walked back into was already gone. My sister had already made the choice that ended what we were to each other. I did not end it. I just stopped pretending it had not already ended. The condo is mine. The floors are new. The light comes in good in the afternoon. I am okay. I think about cause and effect a lot, not in any mystical sense. I'm an accountant, I live in spreadsheets, but in the plainest possible way. Every outcome has a chain behind it. Every number on a balance sheet got there through a series of decisions someone made, one after another, each one building on the last. What happened to me had a chain too. Viv decided she knew better. That was the first link. She looked at my condo, at the market, at some guy in expensive sneakers talking about returns, and she made a unilateral choice with someone else's asset. Not because she was malicious, I think. I have spent a long time sitting with that, and I genuinely believe she told herself she was helping. But good intentions do not override the need for consent. They never have. The warmth of your motivation does not change the nature of the act. She forged my name. She sold my home. She handed $210,000 to a fraudster and then spent nearly a year planning how to hide it from me. Whatever she felt in her heart while doing all of that does not alter what it was. That is the ethics of it, and I think it matters to name it clearly. We live in a culture that is very good at excusing harmful behavior when the person doing it loved you while they did it. Love is not a legal defense. Love is not a substitute for asking. And love, real love, does not make decisions for you and then construct an elaborate fiction to keep you from finding out. The intelligence part of this story is harder to talk about because it involves my own failure. I am a forensic accountant. I find fraud for a living. And I was defrauded by my own sister for over a year because I stopped applying the same rigor to my personal life that I apply at work. I did not set up the county recorder alerts. I did not audit the rental account monthly. I trusted instead of verified, and there is a lesson in that I carry with me every single day now. Trust is not the same as due diligence. You can love someone completely and still check. Those two things are not in conflict. The most trusting thing I could have done for both of us, in hindsight, was build a system that did not require my sister to be perfect. And then there is the resilience part. The part where you find out something devastating and you have to decide, in real time, who you are going to be about it. I did not fall apart. I am proud of that. I sat in a hotel room with my laptop and I worked the problem the same way I would work any case. I called Renata. I pulled the deed records. I organized the closing file. I let the process do what processes exist to do. Not because I was unaffected. I cried exactly once, alone, the night I read the notary's signature on documents she had never actually witnessed, but because I knew that falling apart would not get my property back. Clarity would. Documentation would. The law would. Brooke Ellison got her condo back. That is not luck. That is what happens when you refuse to let grief become paralysis. What I want anyone to take from this is simple. The people who harm you are not always strangers. Sometimes they are the people who made you feel safest, And when that happens, when the betrayal comes from inside the house, the answer is not to shrink from it or absorb it quietly to keep the peace. The answer is to be exactly as capable as you actually are. Document everything. Get a good attorney, let the system work, and trust yourself enough to go through the hard thing instead of around it. The floors in my condo are new. The light in the afternoon is exactly as good as I remembered. I am still here.